Welcome to the Let Them Live podcast with Emily Burning, a place for meaningful conversations, real stories, and a shared mission to protect life. What's up, everyone? I'm Emily, your host and founder and co-founder. I can't forget about my other co-founder, and president of Let Them Live. And today I have yet another backdrop for, I don't know if I've actually explained this, but Nathan and I ended up deciding to spend the summer up here in Indiana with his family. And so we are at the family business, and it's kind of you step in and it's like a time machine back to the 70s. I've got these like really rad curtains over here. So this is the best spot to do the podcast with the Wi-Fi. So here I am. But I digress. So I'm really excited today for the guests that we're going to have. I always say that, and it's always true. But our guest today is Gwyn, and she has just an absolutely incredible story. I actually met her earlier this summer, May or June, at the Leadership Institute. And quick plug for the Leadership Institute: if you're not familiar with the Leadership Institute, you should definitely get familiar with the Leadership Institute. That's where Nathan and I actually met. They do training, like political, training, fundraising training, things like that. So Nathan and I actually worked for the Leadership Institute for a time back in 2017. And we've just been connected with them ever since. They have amazing trainings if you're, a conservative, or even if you're not a conservative, but it's a really, really great place. So I had actually gone to speak at like a conference they were having, and Gwyn was there. So we got a chance to meet. She shared part of her story, and I thought that she would be an amazing guest to talk about just her own personal testimony. It touches on so many things. Being really young, finding out that you're pregnant. There's an adoption story. There's a whole lot that Gwyn has to share, and I'm really excited for her to do that. So I'm gonna stop yapping, and I'm going to bring her up. What's up, Gwyn? How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am great. I'm so glad that you're here, and we finally did it. For everyone that doesn't know, it was so funny. Yesterday, I was on this link, and then Gwyn was on another link, and we were both like waiting for each other. So but we made it. We're here. So
Did, yep.
yeah. So I would love for you to share like a little bit about your background, like, who you are, maybe even where you're from, and just all of that. And then, we can get into your testimony, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, so I was born in Florida. We moved here into Georgia when I was about 3 years old. My dad's a pastor, and so he was working in Florida. He moved here to get a pastoral job. And I grew up in a Christian home. My parents are amazing. I have a brother and a sister who are soon to be junior, and my brother just graduated. I was a very energetic and creative child. My parents strived to give me everything that I needed. I was very athletic, and I knew that that was something I wanted to pursue as I got older. I grew up in the church. As my dad being a pastor, I was always there. Pretty much everybody in my county knows who we are, and I loved growing up in the church. I think that it was a really good community. I had a great support system. I had amazing friends, and I just had the best childhood. I think anybody that had a childhood like mine is super thankful and grateful, and I hope that I can give my future kids something like that.
100%. Well, I think that's really good to always lay out like the backstory, because we all come from different backgrounds, different families, different lives growing up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of your life is like determined or laid out the exact way that you would think.
Right.
Um yeah, so take us through. So you graduate high school, right? And you ended up getting an athletic scholarship?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So I knew pretty much from 5th grade that playing basketball in college is what I wanted to do. And so around my senior year, I ended up transferring to a private school my sophomore year. My dad became my basketball coach, and that was just my goal, was just play basketball in college, play basketball in college. And so I got a couple offers. I ended up committing to a school in North Georgia. And so from then on, I moved onto campus, and I had a really hard time when I first moved onto campus because, like I said, growing up with my dad as a pastor, everybody knew who we were. And so I think that I had this almost unnecessary pressure to feel like I had to uphold a good standard. And although that is an accurate estimate, I put way too much pressure on myself. And so growing up, I had kind of built in friendships with either other pastors' kids or kids at my private school because it was a really small private school. So when I moved to my college and nobody knew who I was, and it was my first time experiencing my dad not being my coach, I had a really hard time making friends. I felt like I was too Christian for my basketball team, but I felt like I was too worldly for the people that were at my private school trying to get to know me. My college was also a private Christian college. And so I kind of created this self isolation bubble almost. And anybody that tried to get to know me, I would push away. But at the same time, I was also itching for a connection with somebody. And I think that that kind of created an unhealthy desire to pursue a guy. And I knew the ways that I should have gone about looking for a relationship with a guy. And growing up, I had always continuously been getting in trouble because I wasn't allowed to date. And so that was like the biggest thing on my mind was like, okay, I'm going to find a guy. And throughout middle school and high school, I was always just being rebellious and sneaky with guys. And so I knew that like when I got onto my college campus, I was like, okay, I'm free. I'm an adult. This is my
Yeah.
mission. I will find a boyfriend.
Like any 18-year-old, I mean, I can speak from experience. When I went to college, it was like, woohoo, let's go. I don't have a curfew. I can do whatever and not that that's like a good thing, but
Yeah.
it's understandable because, we're lacking some logical, critical thinking when we're 18
Yeah.
going to college, so it's a completely understandable like emotion. I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. I had this kind of like almost like a fantasy idea of what college was. And I don't know if that's from Disney Channel or I don't know where I got that, but I just thought like I'm going to find my husband in college. Like that's where he's going to be. And so that just was my mindset going forward. And that's all that I cared about.
Yeah. So with that being like your, only focus and kind of where you put all of your energy and your attention, I mean, tell us what happened. I mean, so you meet a guy, right?
So I met a
That's
guy.
how it starts.
I met a guy. I actually met him pretty much the first week, but we didn't start hanging out until about halfway through the semester. And upon hanging out, it didn't go as much as I thought it would. The plan that I had kind of envisioned. He was a foreign exchange student, and so he kind of wanted to keep our relationship secretive, and I was okay with that too because, like I said originally, I wasn't allowed to date. So I was okay with being secretive because that was just how my lifestyle was. And we ended up just creating a relationship that was purely hooking up. There was no real intimacy, there was no emotional connection. We weren't pursuing dating, we were just hooking up. And we ended up, that would happen about every other weekend for probably a 2 or 3 month span. And I knew that what I was doing was wrong. And I would always feel conviction after leaving his dorm or him leaving my dorm. But the prospect of losing him felt threatening because in that moment in my life, he felt like the only situation that I did have control over. And so I was okay meeting the needs that he had kind of put in front for both of us, as long as it meant that I had a connection with a guy. And so the last time that we hooked up, we had an incident, and I took a plan B within about 12 hours. And I went back to my dorm the next morning, and I just thought to myself, like, okay, this is not what God has for me. This is not, my parents would be so upset if they knew what I was doing. And this was very out of character for me too, because although I did have a sexual past, hooking up with somebody was very abnormal for me. And I just felt this conviction and I knew this wasn't right. And so after our, I guess you could say, pregnancy scare, I decided to let him know, hey, I'm not going to be pursuing this anymore. And he completely agreed. And so we kind of went on our separate ways. And that was around that was around November. And so we knew that we had Christmas break coming up in December, and the new year we would just kind of go back to being friends and not continue to pursue what we were doing.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys definitely like it's crazy because I'm listening to you. And the thing that really stood out was you talked about like feeling like you had control. And I think that's something that especially in like the age that we're in, that's something that a lot of people promote. Like, you have control over your own life, your own body, your own situation. And like, it's like in the moment, maybe it feels empowering, but it's like that's like the short term. But
Right.
I think long term, that actually wasn't empowering. It wasn't,
Exactly.
what you felt like to your core was something that, you were wanting to do, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I know that control. I didn't realize until I got to college that control was a big issue for me. I knew that
Mm,
loved attention. And I always thought it was a healthy attention. But I even remember when I got baptized when I was 7, we had a Saturday night service. And I looked at my mom and I was like, Mom, there's not enough people here. Like, I just was continuously like, I needed people to see me. I needed to be affirmed in what I was doing. I needed to know that what I was doing was good and that I was the best at it. And so when I got to my college and I had a wake up call of this is what real life looks like. Not everybody's going to know you. You're not always going to be the best at what you do. I didn't like that. And so I was the best to him because I was we were doing what we were doing and it was outside of what everybody else knew and I was okay with that and I was willing to give up I guess my character, for lack of a better word, just to be able to
mhm.
feel like I'm getting attention from
Like
something.
that external validation.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
is such a slippery slope, and I think a lot of us have, at one point or another dealt with that where we're seeking something, like, obviously other than God or, another person, instead of understanding that, other people can't make us happy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love my husband, if we're having a bad day, that doesn't determine my like whether or not I'm, having a good day or not. Like we control our emotions here. But it is such a slippery slope when you look for external validation.
Yeah.
So you're you're doing that, then like what happens? I mean, you're continuing to like you guys got back from break. Like, yeah, tell me what happens
So,
next.
around after the pregnancy scare, I took the Plan B, and I wasn't very familiar with Plan B, but I had always seen on like TikTok and heard other girls talk about how, oh, you have 0% chance of getting pregnant if you take Plan B. And so I thought I was good. Um, Around the following 2 or 3 weeks, so towards the end of November, I started to not feel very good. I missed my period. I had all the pretty pre pregnancy symptoms. And so I ended up going into a Wendy's bathroom just late at night. I was with one of my friends from my hometown. She came up to see me, and I took a pregnancy test. And it was very visibly positive. But I had never seen a pregnancy test before. I didn't know. I thought I was reading it wrong. I was like, yeah, there's no way. This is not real. And so I went back to my dorm. And I ended up I didn't have a lot of close friends, but the people I was close with were on my basketball team. And so I ended up telling two of the girls on my basketball team, and I said, hey, this is kind of the situation. Would you guys be willing to come to Walmart with me and get some more tests? So me and my hometown friend and these two girls, we all get in the car and then another girl shows up, and she'll kind of play in later in the story. But I was pretty upset with her being there because I wanted zero, like I didn't want anybody to know. Like this was my secret to keep. Nobody needs to know. So us five, we go to Walmart. We
You're
take
already, like, packed in the car, like, it's a whole
it
party.
went from just me knowing to now 5 people know, including me, and so I was just spiraling at this point, and so we go to Walmart, we go back to the dorms, we are all taking the test because I wanted to see what a negative test looked like, and so
Oh
mine
my
was
gosh, so you all took
yes,
you know what that makes me think of is I've seen this on TikTok where there's like a group of girls and they're like, let's all take a pregnancy
exactly.
test roulette or whatever. And then you find out that someone is actually, that's what it made me think of.
It's very similar to that, yeah, and so I knew that 2 of the 5 of us was very much not gonna be pregnant because they had done a great job of, practicing abstinence, and so I was like, this will show me what a negative test looks like. So mine was very much positive and all of theirs were very much negative. And even then I was like, okay, it's a false positive. Like I had been
Wow.
researching and finding all the ways of how a pregnancy test could be wrong. And so I just was kind of convinced like, yeah, that's not accurate. There's no way.
Just like in
So
denial.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I vividly remember thinking, like, how cliche of me, the pastor's daughter gets pregnant. Like, I'm just fulfilling all these stupid prophecies, like, that is so ridiculous, like, out of all the things I could have done, and so I just was like that night, I mean, I went back to my dorm room and I just laid my head down and I was just like, "I'm not pregnant, like, that's not accurate, there's no way."
You're like, "I can will this away. If I just say it enough, then it's just not true."
I was like, if I just pray enough, like, if I just tell God, like, "Hey, I'm gonna get my life back on track," then he'll take whatever's going on away, like, the next test I take will be negative.
Right, like, it was kind of like a punishment in a way where it's like,
That's
"Hey, I promise I'll get my life back on track, just I can't I don't want I can't deal with this."
exactly how
Um,
it felt, yep.
when in reality, obviously you'll get to that, but it turned
Yeah.
out to be totally the opposite, but keep going.
Yes. So, I ended up, I knew as a Christian and I wasn't heavily involved in politics at this time, but I knew I was a conservative and I knew that I was pro-life. And so I knew that abortion was not an option for me. I ended up telling the guy that I was seeing, and he immediately was abortion all the way. And to his discretion, he wasn't a Christian and he was a foreign exchange student. And so where they live, that's very common. And you don't get girls pregnant and you don't sleeping around is a common thing,
Right.
but that's a no-go. And so I ended up going on my phone and looking at abortion and just doing some research, and I found the abortion pill. And
Oh,
so
wow.
very much shifted my view of what abortion was because I knew I would never go get a procedure done because I had seen the science behind that. But the abortion pill, I basically equated to a birth or a plan B. And so I was like, oh, it's a harmless pill, not knowing, of course, the repercussions of how detrimental that can be to not just the baby, but the mother. Um, and so I ultimately kind of talked with some of the girls that I had been sharing what was going on with, and they, I wouldn't say they encouraged me, but we all did agree this is the best way I wouldn't be pregnant anymore. And so I went on pretty much every hospital and clinic website. I made multiple phone calls and I was just looking for a place where I could walk in, buy the pill, and be done. I didn't want to have to travel somewhere. I didn't want to have to make an appointment. I wanted it to be quick and quiet and nobody would know and then it would be over.
And that's what I wanna touch on too, like, I feel like I keep interrupting your story, but there's just so many good points you're
Yeah.
making. Um, it abortion pill, like, I just wanna highlight what you said for everybody who's listening or watching. Again, there are so many misconceptions about what it is and what it does, and ironically, I just made a video yesterday about abortion, the abortion pill regimen and the abortion pill reversal. Um, and again, there's so many misconceptions. There's misconceptions about Plan B as well.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Yeah, plan B is advertised as, "Oh, well, it's gonna stop the
Mhm.
sperm from meeting the egg," and, in some circumstances, that may happen, but the reality is we can't really tell, but there's also a chance with plan B that it's not preventing the sperm from meeting the egg. The sperm has already met the egg and formed and created a new human being, but it's gonna prevent, that zygote, that embryo from implanting,
Yeah,
which is an abortion. So, it gets really sticky and tricky, and then you enter the abortion pill regimen, and yeah, it's not just a quick situation, and
mhm,
it's quiet, but I think that that's how it's advertised, and
yeah,
so I think it's important to just remind everyone, like, it's not that, so
yes.
I'm glad
Oh,
that you touched on that. So
yeah,
you have been
okay.
researching.
Yeah.
Did you actually then order and you obtained the abortion
Well,
pills?
I, ended up realizing that I was gonna have to make an appointment, so I called a Planned Parenthood clinic in Atlanta. I was about an hour from Atlanta, and my school is about 3 hours from my home. And so that week, we would have a basketball game on the 16th of December, and then I would get to go home for about a week before I had to come back for the or the spring semester. So my plan originally was I was going to schedule the appointment the day that I was supposed to go home. I was going to have hopefully one of my friends drive me because I didn't know what repercussions the abortion pill was going to have on my body. I was going to hopefully have one of my friends drive me to Atlanta. I take the pill, we come back to the school, and then I go home. Everything's done. I'm good. I get to return to my scholarship. My parents don't have to know, yada, yada, yada. And so I was sitting in the dorm room with the friend that had been invited that I didn't really know, and then the two girls that I told. And um, I knew that this was not a good idea. And I knew that what I was doing was wrong. But knowing that I had an appointment was so comforting to me that I was like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's going to be over. It'll be done. You won't have to worry about it. And I had also, in doing research, I had learned about kind of the timeline of when a baby's heart grows. And so I thought to myself, okay, as long as this baby does not have a heartbeat and I take this abortion pill, I'm good. I no harm, no foul. I won't, be sad that I murdered a child. I won't like there'll be no repercussions
Like,
later
you were
of
going through all of the different, like, justifications and, like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, it doesn't have a heart. Oh, well, this is the best," or,
Yeah,
and I wanted to ask you too, like, what were the main things, like, in this moment, and it's okay if there's no answer because sometimes we make decisions and we don't actually know why,
yeah,
but, what were the factors that were, like, pushing you? I mean, obviously, you're young.
yeah.
Obviously, you felt like, "Okay, I did something I shouldn't have done." Um, you had mentioned your scholarship. Was that weighing on you as well? Like, "I'm gonna lose this scholarship?"
Yeah, so like I said, my whole life I had prepared to be a college athlete, and I think that the main two factors were my dad's role in the church and my scholarship. And I did not want to have to come home and tell my parents what I had been doing because not only would it have been a shock that I was pregnant, but even the idea of me being sexually active would have been foreign to them at this moment. And
Yeah,
so it would have just woken up an entire new world of me living a double life almost. And I mean, to them, I told them what they wanted to hear, and then I did what I wanted to do, and I could sustain that living. And the other factor was definitely my scholarship because I would say in that moment, I wasn't very excited about basketball anymore. I mean, I had a hard time adjusting to the team, and I was more so disappointed with the fact that my dad was my upward coach, and then he was my travel ball coach, and then he was my high school coach. And the amount of money and time and energy that my family in particular had spent on getting me to where I was, like that would have all been thrown out had I,
yeah.
come home and was pregnant and had to leave my scholarship. And everybody knew me as, oh, Gwen, the basketball player, or Gwen,
Mm.
Billy's daughter, the pastor's kid. And both of those things would have been detrimentally embarrassing if I had to come home and tell everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that highlights, the struggle, and I my hope is with this podcast, there's a lot of things I want to highlight, but what you just touched on is really important, is just getting inside the emotions and the feelings behind someone who finds out they're pregnant and you feel like the weight of the world on you.
Yep.
So, to some people who have never been in that situation or are on the outside, it's very easy to say, "Oh, well, you know, um, it's no big deal." But
Yeah.
when you're the one in it, you're feeling the shame, the embarrassment, the pressure, all of these things. And shame is one of the biggest reasons that kind of pushes women to have abortions, or consider abortions, because they don't want to let people down. When in reality, and I just have to say this, like, and there may be some exceptions that, you know, some church groups or some churches that don't handle this well, but the majority of us, and you can speak to this as well, we love women, we love their babies, no matter how that baby came about,
Yep.
no matter the circumstances. But at this point in time, well, I keep interrupting your story, but
You're
at this at
good.
this point in time, like, you definitely didn't understand that or feel that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say that I wasn't excited. Like, there was a part of me that was so excited because I've always wanted to be a mom. Like, I think that all women inherently have that, nurturing aspect, and we all want to, have kids. And so anytime that excitement would come up, I would just be um, overcome with lies, I think, from the devil of, you can't do this. You don't have any money. You're not going to be able to raise a child by yourself. You're only 19 years old. The father's not even going to be in the picture. Um, and so I was just continuously lying to myself about what this would look like had I decided to keep the baby.
Yeah.
So
So,
I'll
yeah,
kind of
back to, yeah, you guys were sitting down,
yes,
you
yeah.
yeah.
So I'll kind of touch on what ended up bringing me home.
We're taking a quick break to let you know about our sponsors, partners, and affiliates who support Let Them Live. Please check out the link in this episode's description to learn more about them.
So I ended up scheduling the appointment. I decided a girl was going to take me. I was all good. Went back to my dorm. The next morning, I had a girl on my basketball team who, she was about 5 years older. She was a super senior, and we just really clicked. Like, I wouldn't consider her a friend. I think she was almost a mentor just because of the age gap, but she was just my go-to while I was at that school. And I called her into my dorm, and I knew I was just battling with all these options that I had. And I told her my story. I told her my plan. I told her, I kind of gave her a rundown. And she looked at me and she had this huge grin on her face. And she was so excited for me. And I was like taken. I was like, "Why are you happy right now? What in the world is going on?" And so she ended up sharing a story with me about how her and her husband had been trying, and right before the season started, she found out she was pregnant, and she ended up having a miscarriage about 3 months later. And she just expressed to me how there are so many women who are continuously for years and years trying to get pregnant, and I just was able to do it on a whim, like not even on purpose, and how that was such a blessing from God, and that I'm currently creating life, and that it's a child that is half of me, and I just could not, I couldn't grasp onto that, and I was very frustrated with her for being excited because I just thought, like, this is so detrimental for my life and for his life and for everybody else around me. And I would be lying if I said that didn't kind of wake me up a little bit, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to decide, this is not the route that I need to take. And so I was back in the dorm room with all those girls the next night because I just did not want to be alone at this time, which I'm sure anybody could reasonably understand. And those my two friends from the basketball team had left, and I was stuck with this girl. And she doesn't mind me saying her name because I've shared my testimony plenty of other times. Her name is Zoe. So I met Zoe, and it was just me and Zoe in the dorm room. And I was getting ready to leave, and she kind of sat me down and she said, "Hey, before you go, I want you to know that I'm really glad that we met, and that no matter what decision you make, you'll always have a friendship here. But I see that you claim to be a believer. And as your sister in Christ, I cannot support the decision that you're about to make." And I about lost my mind because I was like, who in the world does this girl think she is that she gets to talk to me like this? She gets to hold me accountable. She gets to hold Christ over my head. She doesn't even know me. We met maybe a week ago. I mean, I was furious. And I just started bawling my eyes out. And I just told her all the reasons that I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't. And she's also a pastor's daughter. So she was kind of able to adapt to what I was possibly going through. And she just shared with me all of the exciting things that I could look forward to if I decided to be a mother. And I ended up going back to my dorm that night, and I was just continuously praying, and I fully surrendered to God that night, I think. And I don't remember canceling my appointment. I don't remember my drive home, but I know that I ended up at home and I didn't go to the appointment. And so I do have those two girls to thank for the rest of my life for that.
That is amazing. Wow, and I just thought of this too. Zoe, I don't know if anyone listening knows this, but the name Zoe, actually means life.
Wow.
Yeah, it's comes from Greek and it means life, and, so that's just kind of interesting, but that's absolutely incredible, and it takes some serious, like, guts to it's a lot easier. It could have been so much easier in the moment for Zoe to be like, "I'm not gonna say anything. I don't know this girl very well," but it takes some, like, kahunas to be
Yeah.
like, um, "I'm just gonna speak," and that's a true friend, even if it's a friend that you just met, like, that's a true like you said, sister in Christ.
Yeah.
Um, and that's absolutely amazing that you had both of these women, like, telling you, and the first woman that you talked about, um, it's this is so important to highlight, is our reaction to women, telling us that they're pregnant, especially when it's obviously in, like, less than ideal circumstances or, who are considering abortion, like, our reaction can change a lot, um,
Yeah.
so anytime I have someone, maybe it's a mom who we helped, years ago. We had that recently. We had a mom that we helped years ago. She found out she was pregnant again. Obviously, still wasn't like super excited about it, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Congratulations. How far along are you?" And just being excited about it because that it may not occur to them to be
Mhm.
excited, you know? So I think that's absolutely amazing. So you go home now, you
Yes.
are not having an abortion, you're gonna choose life. So do you then tell your parents or, like, you probably were freaking out a little bit?
Yeah. So I came home and I still at this point did not know what I was going to do. I knew that I wasn't doing an abortion, but I hadn't really accepted being a mother or comprehended that I was going to be bringing a child into the world. And I also was pretty ignorant to the process of being pregnant. And I just thought I would be able to go back to school and finish out basketball. And so I had about a week and a half, 2 weeks of Christmas break before I had to return. And around the third day of being home, I started getting really sick. I mean, I was just throwing up anything and everything I could eat, which at the time I didn't know, but I do know now that's a sign of pregnancy. And so my mom one night, I prayed. I just was like, God, give me an opportunity to tell them because I can't just spring this on them. Like, they're gonna have to find out, but I need your help to get me into this situation. So we go to drop off my little sister at one of her friends' houses, and my mom and dad think I just have the stomach bug. And my mom was like, "Are you pregnant?" And she was joking. And I just looked at her and I said yes, and I started bawling my eyes out. Yeah. And
When you
so,
ask God to give you the opportunity, sometimes that opportunity is gonna be so direct.
yep.
Your mom was probably like, "I was joking, but you're
Yes.
serious."
Yes, so she still thought I was joking, and I just fell into her arms, and, I mean, she said, "Who's the dad?" And at this point, she still thought I was joking, and I told her his name, and I just said, "He goes to my school, and he's a foreign exchange student, and we weren't in a relationship," and so I just started spilling, and she didn't, I mean, I'm sure any mother can understand she didn't know how to react. Like, she had no clue what to do. So she said, "Well, tell your dad." So my dad comes in there. I'm still sobbing. I give him the most brief rundown that I can muster up. And he's, of course, furious. And so he kind of just leaves. And I don't really remember that night very well. But one thing that I do remember is that my biggest fear was that I would be kicked out and that I would be disowned and that my parents would want nothing to do with me. But I will always remember the peace and the comfort that I um, experienced after telling my parents, that them holding me and praying over me. And they knew that this was a decision that had already been made. And why would they sit here and ridicule me and condemn me for something that I had already done? It was done. And so they just brought peace and love. And of course, I had to share my entire past with them about not just the father of the baby, but prior guys and how I got myself in this situation and what I had been battling with at school. And that was a really long process to work through. And I would definitely say we're still working through that now, but on the different side of a redeemed situation. And so, yeah,
That's amazing. And secrets, like when we hold secrets, they start to fester, and that's
yeah,
when you go down this like shame spiral, and there's
yeah,
guilt, and it's just really bad. It's like I mean, it's like a wound, and if you have a physical wound and you don't take care of it and clean it and bandage it up and let it air out, it's gonna get infected, and that's the same thing with things like this that we hold in. And I think it's important to reiterate what you said about, you know, your parents realizing and understanding and that it was already done, right? Like this baby is already here. Um and sometimes we all will have maybe different initial reactions to things, and I can only imagine the shock, especially when the facade was that there's no like of the facade that you had put on of the life that you were living, and it's
yeah,
completely the opposite. But what's so important is that they loved on you. And I think that's exactly a reflection of God as a father, where,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think back to the Israelites, like, dude, the Israelites, they kept messing up so bad over and over and over again. That's
yeah,
like the biggest thing I take away from the Old Testament. Um, but God still provided, still loved, still had compassion, and I think that that's reflected in your parents. And it's important to parents out there, like if you have a kid who's a teenager or whatever, and they find out that they're pregnant, like your reaction again is could change the course of things.
yeah.
So you could be upset, you could be confused, but reminding them that it's going to be okay and that you love them and you love their baby is like crucial.
100%. I agree.
Wow. Okay, so talk me through, like, so now you've told them everything's out in the open.
Yeah.
How was your pregnancy? What was going through your mind at this time? Um, did you have a conversation with your baby's father saying like, I'm keeping this baby, like I'm going through with this pregnancy? Like what was all that like?
Yeah. So, I within about a 24-hour span, we had to decide if I was going back to school or not. We decided I wasn't. We went up to my school. We packed up my dorm. I told my coach that I just didn't think I would be able to contribute to the team as he would like, and that I just don't think basketball's for me anymore. I didn't really tell him anything, which of course word got out later because of the people that had already known. And so I came home. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I wanted my pregnancy to be private. I had kind of accepted, okay, I'm going to be a mother, but as for these next 7, 8, 9 months, nobody is going to know that this is going on. And although I knew that was super hard for my parents, I am so grateful that they respected that boundary, given ended up being the decision that I did make. But I texted the dad and I said, hey, I'm not doing an abortion. I'm coming home. And he wasn't mad, but he was not happy. I mean, I'm sure you can only imagine his reaction to that. And so throughout the pregnancy, we stayed in contact. We actually have a great relationship now. But about a month in, my mom told me that we have a friend that is on the board of Covenant Care Adoptions in Macon, Georgia, and that she wanted me to meet with one of the birth counselors. And I immediately was like, no, I'm not doing adoption. To me, adoption at that time was like a baby going into an orphanage with a bunch of bunk beds and waiting for the parents to say, oh, I want that one. Or it was a very transactional situation in my mind. And I was like, I'm not doing that. There's no way. And so I ended up meeting with the birth counselor, just kind of courtesy of my mom. I was like, I've done all of this. The least I can do is, come with my mom to meet this lady. And so they ended up sharing with me that whether I decided to choose an adoption plan or not, that Covenant Care would walk with me through my pregnancy and they would help me. And so I got on Medicare and I was able to kind of take care of all my bills throughout the labor and delivery and everything. And around, let me backtrack. So during that time, my whole life, which I've kind of touched on this, I was consistently moving around and I didn't want peace. I didn't want quiet. I wanted basically chaos and control. That's all I cared about. And with my pregnancy being private, I had this like time of peace in my life where I stayed home. I did online school. I had maybe two friends that knew. One was the one that was up there with me, and another was her boyfriend at the time. And so I was living in my house for almost upwards to 9 months. And my parents were at work, my sister was at school, and it was just me and God. And I was started my quiet times, and I fully was able to surrender my future to him. And I think that's something I lacked in the past, because I would always say, oh, I'm going to get back on track, and once I'm doing good, I'll start rekindling that relationship with Christ. But in order to get back on track, you have to start with that relationship, because that works your heart to want to make better decisions. So in that time, that's kind of when I was introduced to politics, and I started getting heavily invested in research and learning about so many things. And so around the 6 month mark, I had fully decided, okay, adoption's what I want to do. I had learned what the process looked like. Everything is up to me. I get to choose my daughter's future. And although that may seem very materialistic to some people, that was such a exciting thing for me, because in that moment, I knew I could be a good mother. I knew that the father would be present. I knew that she would have great grandparents and she'd grow up in a church, great church community. But I just felt like there's got to be more. Like there's got to be more out there for my daughter. There's got to be more that I can give her. And I learned that through Covenant Care, around the 6 month mark, I got to look at a bunch of profiles, and these were books of families who aligned with the qualities and the aspects that me and her father were looking for. And so originally we wanted a family that didn't have any kids, because we wanted to bless a family with a baby. And um, I ended up opening up this book, and I immediately just loved the way that this family looked. There were three brothers and mom and a dad. They kind of lived close to where I'm at. And I just loved the Southern aspect of it. They had an American flag on their front porch. It was just all these things that were just very kind of small, but they just really touched me. And when I opened up the book, the very first page on every book is a letter that the parents write to the birth mom that's reading the book. And the very first sentence said, whether you choose to be a parent or choose us as your child's family, we want to thank you for choosing life. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, like how in the world would this mom have known? She doesn't know me. She doesn't know I'm reading her book, but her words that she wrote almost 10 years ago are touching me in this moment and are speaking to exactly what I've been going through. And I just felt like God had shown a beacon down on this family. And so I ultimately talked to the dad, and we decided that this was the family that we were going to go with. And so I finished out my pregnancy, and the the days leading up to going into the hospital were insanely difficult, because I knew that there was this kind of mother-child bond that I'd always heard about, and I was scared that I was going to experience that, because I didn't want to go back on my decision. And so I ended up giving birth on August 18th. So this August she'll be a year old. And I got to spend 3 days with her during my revocation period. And those were some really, really dark nights. But God just continuously kept reminding me, you're not doing this for you, you're doing this for her. Because every decision that I wanted to redact was, I want to be a mom. I want to raise her. I want to dress her up. I want to, it was all about me. It was not what was best for my daughter. It was not having a two-parent Christian loving home with people that are ready and equipped to be parents. And so she ended up going into interim care, which is a family that keeps her at night during my 72 hours of getting to change my mind. And then the last day that I got to see her, I put her in the car and I buckled her up, and she was taken back to interim care that night. And then the next morning, she was given to the family, and I was just devastated when I came home, and I was so sad. I wasn't sad about my decision, but I was sad that I knew what it was like to be a mother, and I was longing for that connection. And I was sad because, like, this little baby has no clue what's going on around her, and I didn't want her to feel like she was just kind of disregarded and left. And the next day, I got to watch a video of the family meeting her for the first time and holding her. And in that video, I mean, all fear and anxiety was just out of the window. And I was only overcome by like redemption and restoration from the Holy Spirit with seeing the family, knowing that in the sin that me and this guy had created in our fleshly desires, God was able to redeem the situation and bless a family. And I think that that's something that my family will always be able to remember.
That I'm, like, on the verge of tears for
Yeah, I'm
several
like trying
reasons.
to keep it together.
I'm like, "Quinn, you're making me cry." Like, I mean, first of all, yes, like, God can work through anything. Like, there's nothing we can do to mess up his plans. Like, we're not powerful enough, and, he knew all the way back to, when you guys, like you said, you're having these, fleshly desires, like, he already knew.
Yeah.
And I'm also, like, I'm emotional because I can't imagine the feelings around that. Like, you go through this time, your baby is growing inside of you, and that, bond that
Mhm.
women have with their babies, especially when they give birth, like, chemically, right? Like,
Yeah.
your body knows you're just connected. And for you to, like, overcome the f like, overcome that in a way and keep your daughter at the forefront and what would be best for her is, like, I'm just blown away. I mean, I'm blown away by all birth mothers that
Yes.
have 3 days with their baby and then have to part,
Mhm.
because it takes a serious act of love and selflessness to do
Mhm.
that, and I just think that as your daughter grows up and understands that, um, she's gonna be so grateful. Like, I can just imagine you sharing her story, your story with her,
Yeah.
and her just being, like, so grateful, and that kinda leads into my next question is, what is the relationship, that you and your daughter have? What's the relationship with the adoptive family? Is there one?
Yeah, so Covenant Care kind of had a tricky case with me because a lot of times birth moms are in really difficult situations, and they may be on drugs or they may have gotten pregnant not consensually. And so there's a lot of legal things that they have to go through, and sometimes they're not ready to see their child. And thank goodness that they decide to go through with that, because even in all that hardship, they are able to fulfill what God has for them. But so I have an open adoption. I met the family in September of last year. That was my first time meeting them. My daughter was about a month old, I guess would be accurate. And just, I mean, they were amazing. Like, the mom brought me this necklace, and it has her name on it, and then it has an iris flower because that's her name. Iris. And so I do want to touch on her name in a little bit because it kind of refers to the Zoe thing that you told me. But so yeah, it's an open adoption. I have contractually, I don't know if that's the right word, contract plural. Okay.
Yeah,
Anyways,
that's a word, yeah.
2 visits, a year until she's 5, I believe, and then it's 1 until she's 10, and it's something along those lines, but I've already seen her so much more than that. Like, I saw her in September, and then I saw her in February for our visit, and then on Mother's Day, I got to go up and go to church with them and watch her get dedicated into the church and have lunch with the family and the grandparents, and, I'll get to
I
see
love
her.
that. Like, the
It's
Mother's Day, I mean, this family so many families, that I know personally or just, and I know that this is a thing where, they're like, "This is my baby, and I don't, wanna have an open adoption," and I can understand that, but wow, how beautiful is it that they're like, "Come with us to church, it's Mother's Day," you did this, and they're so grateful to you for that, so I just think that's beautiful.
It's amazing, and I definitely would I'll kinda touch on this later, but if you go through the right agency, like, the parents that are in the agency are itching to have you included in the child's life. Like, they want you. They know what you're going through, and they would love to. I mean, I can see it already. This family, I think they'd probably have me all the time if it was like, if we could. And so, I'll see her again. Oh, and also I shared my testimony at my church, in March. That was my first time publicly announcing everything I had gone through. And so that was a really big deal just because nobody prior to that, I mean, even people that were close with us hadn't known anything that was going on. And they came to that, and they got to watch me share my full story, and they met Zoe. And so they just got to experience kind of what my life looks like. And so I'll also get to see her in August, and I get monthly updates. I get about 20 pictures and a written letter. And then we also have this app called Cluster, which is, it's almost like a Instagram app, but it's just for us. And so the dad has one
Okay,
with them,
so
and I have
he
one.
gets to see too, and
There's photos on there, and I mean, I get a photo just about every other day. I mean, it's amazing. Like, I get to watch her grow up, and there's so many things that God did when I picked this family that I had no clue would happen. Like, I know this is kind of controversial, but I didn't want her to get vaccinated. And I knew that in the time that she was in my care, I could make that decision. But once she was given into revocation and my rights were up, she was the state's until the adoption process was finalized. And this family also didn't want her to get vaccinated. And so we were able to come to agreement with the state that that's something we didn't want to take place. And since both parties consented, it wouldn't take place. And another thing is they're homeschooling. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with her. And I knew that I was able to breastfeed when I was in the hospital, but I knew that, that's not an option once she goes with this family. And I wasn't excited about formula. And they actually have a farm, and they gave her goat's milk. And they like added in
I
these
never heard
certain,
of that.
so they added in like refined sugar and these vitamins, and it was the closest thing that somebody could get to breast milk. And it was just, there's just so many amazing things that I would have never known that they would have done that. And it's just been continuously like fulfilling the prayers that I've been praying to God. And so it's, yeah, it's an amazing relationship. My
Amazing.
middle name is Kaylee, and they kept her middle name as Kaylee. And so they want me to be a part of the life, and she'll grow up knowing who I am. And eventually she'll come to the decision on her own of if she'd like to continue that relationship. But as of right now, I have no fear or worry about what her future will look like in the hands with them.
That is incredible, like, the way that it all just is panning out, and I think this will give encouragement to any women that are listening that are, like, kind of on the fence about adoption, and, it's not common, like, with Let Them Live, we've helped over 1,000 moms. I don't know the exact number, but, um, maybe we're getting close to 1,200, but only 1, to my knowledge, and I would know if there was a mom that gave her baby up for adoption. There's only 1 mom
Yeah.
out of all the moms that we've helped that has, like, successfully signed, sealed, delivered, done in an adoption. So it's not common, but it is beautiful.
Yes.
It's difficult, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm sure, but what a beautiful testimony that you have where you get to be part of her life as well, and just keep seeing that you made the right decision.
Mhm.
And I think that's so beautiful. And I also love her name, Iris. That's so
It's
beautiful. And I
amazing.
know you have a story behind that. So I'd love to.
Originally, me and the dad, we didn't want to name her because we knew that there was a likelihood that the parents would probably rename her. And so we kind of just decided like her middle name will be Kaylee Andrews and then my last name. But we weren't going to touch on it. And so after I gave birth in the hospital, I kind of jokingly was like, hey, does anybody have any names? And my midwife ended up giving a name, Sophia. And that was a name that her father had mentioned, and I think that's a pretty popular name in his culture. And so we named her Sophia Kaylee Andrews. And when they renamed her, I learned that Sophia means wisdom. And so in the 3 days that her name was Sophia, that was the time in my life that I needed to have the most wisdom to continue with the decision that I was making. And then Iris means something along the lines of a new beginning. And so I just thought it was so amazing that, and Kaylee means beloved, I believe. And so I just thought it was so amazing how even something as little as that is just continuous affirmation that it's going to be okay and that this is the correct thing to do.
Wow, I think that's amazing. God drops these like little nuggets of
Yes.
just things that aren't coincidence, right? They're just it's like it's from God, and I think that that is just so, so beautiful. Wow. I'm gonna cry after this. Wow. So she's gonna be 1 coming up here. How are
Yes.
you
So
feeling about that?
yeah, she's a stinker. She's huge. I mean, when she was born, she was only about 7-ish pounds. I mean, she wasn't, but she's
All
ginormous.
right, we
Like,
love a good chunk,
she,
baby.
me and the dad are athletes, so that's fingers crossed. That's our hope that she'll keep growing. But yeah, she just started crawling. She definitely was held way too much, but I don't blame them for a second. She's got 3 older brothers, and so she's just active. She's always outside. I love seeing the way that they're raising her, and yeah, so she'll be 1 in August 18th. My birthday's actually August 21st. So last year I got to celebrate my 20th birthday with her, which was amazing. And so I'm excited. She started saying dad, dad, and hat, I believe. No mama yet, which her mom's not very happy about. But
Yeah, I feel like my nieces and nephews, I think they all started saying dada, and my sister-in-law was like, "Excuse me?
yeah, yeah,
Who did
exactly.
all the work here?"
Exactly. She's like, you've got 2 moms and you're not even saying mama yet.
Oh, I love that. I love the heart too that your adoptive family has. Like, I just have to say that. And that's actually the same thing. Like Nathan and I, we don't have kids. Like we've I've been married for almost 6 years. And found out we couldn't get pregnant. So I relate to that side of thing when you talked about that earlier. But we have always been 100% open. We're like, all right, God, whatever you've got. And if it's your will and it's possible and we can do this, like we're open. Like we want to like share these
Yeah,
kids, we want to love on them, but also like have involvement. And I've just seen so many people in my life. There's a donor, and they become just such good friends. And their daughter and their son-in-law adopted, and they actually it was from a teen mom, and they actually take in that teen mom every few months, and she's just part of the family, and I think that's just
yeah,
so unique,
yes.
um, and just beautiful. So
Yes, guys, it's crazy that you said that because this is something I had written down that I wanted to make sure I said. One of the things that the mom had said to me when I met them for the first time in September is that you're not losing your daughter, you're gaining a new family. And so that was just such an eye-opening way to put it, is like I'm gaining all this new family and grandparents and cousins and all these people that I'm now related to by the grace of God. I'm not losing my daughter. I'm gaining, an amazing new side of a family.
Yeah,
And
and your
so
daughter's getting
so
all these people to love on her.
exactly, yep.
Wow, I love that. Well, I am honestly just so grateful for you opening up. I think that you have a real, like, gift for speaking. I think that your story is absolutely incredible, so many ups and downs and twists and turns, and, I wanted to obviously, if there's anything else that you'd like to share, I wanna open it up, but I wanted to ask you to, like, if there's something that you would like to share specifically to women who find themselves pregnant, unplanned pregnancy, or just not ideal circumstances. They're scared, they're considering abortion, or maybe they've gotten to the point where they're maybe considering adoption, like just what you would want to share with them.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would say, and I mean, we touched on this earlier. I'm a big fan of Allie Beth Stuckey, and I've always heard her say this, and it's the circumstance of which your child is conceived does not determine its worth. And I think that also applies to the mother. The circumstance of which your child's conceived does not determine your worth. And that's such a big thing to remember and to understand. And I mean, even I was young, and even in the experience of getting to hold my daughter for the first time, all the fear and frustration and everything was just out of the window. Once you're holding that baby against your chest, like there's absolutely no feeling in the world that compares to that. And I promise that if you just endure whatever situation you're in, there will be a redemptive side to it. I also want to touch on adoption. Adoption is such a beautiful process. I know that there are scary stories that I'm sure everybody's heard. I know that it can seem secretive, but if you pursue the correct adoption agency, and I mean, even Covenant Care in Georgia is an amazing one as a birth mom or a family looking to adopt, it can be such a beautiful process, and it's not materialistic at all. And it's so fulfilling. And then I think the last thing, I actually was doing my quiet time this morning before the podcast, and I thought it was so crazy that this was what I read, but there was a verse, and it's Jeremiah 30:18, and it says, Jerusalem will be rebuilt on its ruins, and the palace reconstructed as before. And then under it, it says, it is often in the places of our greatest pain and our ruins that God wants to construct his greatest reconstructions. And so I think it's so important for women to remember, whether they eventually could be facing an unplanned pregnancy or they are currently in one, or somebody that's in one, that God has a plan and he can restore and redeem any situation. If he's not your savior, he needs to be. And um, there is light at the end of the tunnel, whether you choose to be a mother or whether you choose an adoption plan. Everything will work out for God's glory if you look to him and surrender to his will.
That is absolutely beautiful. There's nothing I can say to top that. So we're just gonna have to end on that note. Like, I mean, that was just 100%, 100%, 100%. Like, you are just on the mark. And I hope that everyone listening really just got I mean, I think there's just no way you can't get a lot of stuff out of this, but I think this may have been one of the best podcasts I've ever had. So I'm so grateful, and I hope everyone listening really liked this. I
Yeah.
just know I'm gonna get text messages saying, "Oh my gosh, I just listened to that podcast." So, I just wanna thank you for being so open. I know that it can be hard sometimes too, kind of recounting everything, but I'm very grateful for you, and I'm so glad that we met. God had this whole thing in the works for quite a while too. So
Yes. And I also want to add, I don't know if you ever have any expected moms watching, but if you are comfortable with tagging my social media, I would love to. If anybody ever wants to reach out and ask me like how I knew that was the decision I wanted to make or how to start that process, I would love to help you. And so, yeah.
absolutely, I love that. And just for our like team, so they can tag it. What is your social media handle?
So my Instagram is GK underscore got game. I've had it since like fifth grade, so don't giggle.
You love those. You love those.
Um,
It's like the embarrassing emails that you created, like
yeah,
the when you were like 8 years old, and it's like just
yeah,
like
exactly. And my Facebook is Gwyn Andrews, GWYN. So yeah.
Okay, Gwyn Andrews. Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, thank you again, Gwyn. I'm so grateful that we had you on, and thank you everyone for listening to another Let Them Live podcast. Yeah, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Let Them Live podcast with Emily Burning. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know your thoughts in the comments and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.